I thought I had found true love when I married Amanda. Our first 2 years were perfect, filled with dreams and plans for our future together. Then I discovered her betrayal with her boss that had been going on for months behind my back. Instead of a messy divorce, I chose to disappear completely from her life, seeking a clean break to heal. Now, years later, she still refuses to let go, tracking me down repeatedly for a second chance I know I can never give. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from. If you have ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your peace, hit subscribe and join me on this journey. I am Lyle, 35 years old, and working as a software developer in Seattle when my story begins. I met Amanda at my friend Jordan's summer barbecue. The moment I saw her laughing with a group by the grill, something clicked. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, and when our eyes met across the yard, I felt an instant connection that I had never experienced before. We struck up a conversation about hiking trails around Mount Rainier, discovering we shared not only a love for the outdoors, but also an appreciation for classic films. That evening we exchanged numbers, and by the next weekend, we were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Amanda was intelligent, ambitious, and had a wonderful sense of humor that balanced my more serious nature. She worked as a marketing executive for a growing tech company, and her drive impressed me. Our relationship progressed quickly, both of us recognizing something special between us. After 8 months of dating during a weekend trip to the Oregon coast, I proposed at sunset. Her joyful tears and immediate yes made me believe I had found my forever partner. Our wedding took place the following spring at a beautiful mountain resort. Surrounded by 60 of our closest friends and family, we exchanged vows under a canopy of blooming cherry trees. My parents, who had been married for 40 years, told us they saw the same devotion in our eyes that had sustained their own marriage. Amanda looked radiant in her lace gown, and when we were pronounced husband and wife, I truly thought we would have our own 40 years and more together. The first 2 years of marriage were everything I had hoped for. We bought our first home together, a charming 3-bedroom Craftsman, in a quiet neighborhood. Weekends were filled with hiking trips, farmers market visits, and home improvement projects. During the week, we supported each other through career challenges and celebrated each success. I was climbing the ranks at my tech company, recently promoted to senior developer, while Amanda was thriving in her role, winning awards for her marketing campaigns. We began discussing starting a family, looking at larger homes in neighborhoods with good schools. Late at night, we would debate baby names and parenting philosophies. I wanted 2 kids. Amanda thought 3 would be perfect. I imagined teaching them to code and camp, while she talked about art classes and travel experiences she wanted to share with them. Our future seemed so clear and beautiful ahead of us. Looking back, there were small red flags I chose to ignore. Occasional white lies about where she had been or who she had lunch with. Last-minute work emergencies that extended her hours. New colleagues whose names would appear in conversation and then mysteriously disappear. One evening, she came home with an expensive watch she claimed was on sale. But when I looked it up online, the price was far higher than she had told me. I brushed it off as a simple misunderstanding. When Amanda started attending more out-of-town conferences, I supported her career ambitions. If she returned home distant and distracted, I attributed it to work stress. If she suddenly changed the passwords on her phone and laptop, I told myself everyone deserves privacy. I was so confident in our bond that I never seriously considered anything might be wrong. I believed we were rock-solid partners, building a dream life together brick by brick. Sometimes she would get defensive when I asked simple questions about her day. Other times, she would seem overcome with affection, planning elaborate date nights or bringing home thoughtful gifts. The inconsistency confused me, but I chalked it up to the natural ebbs and flows of a relationship. After all, we had promised each other forever, and I took that commitment seriously. My friend Stephen tried to warn me once. He mentioned seeing Amanda having lunch with a man at an upscale restaurant downtown, looking quite intimate. When I confronted her, she explained it was her new boss, and they were discussing an important client. I believed her, and even apologized for doubting her. Stephen never brought it up again, but I later learned he had seen much more than he initially shared with me. The discovery happened on an ordinary Tuesday in April. Amanda had left for a 3-day business trip to Chicago that morning. I spent the evening catching up on work, planning to use the alone time productively. Around 9 that night, my phone pinged with a text from my college friend Tyler, who was passing through Seattle on business. Just saw your wife at the Emerald Room. Thought you guys were out of town this week. Confused, I called Tyler immediately. He explained he was having dinner at this upscale downtown restaurant and had spotted Amanda in a corner booth with a man. They were holding hands across the table and looked very much like a couple. Tyler had snapped a discreet photo, unsure if he should interfere, and sent it to me. The image showed Amanda in the black dress she had packed for her business trip, leaning close to a tall, well-dressed man I recognized as Jason Phillips, her boss. Their fingers were intertwined, and the intimacy between them was unmistakable. My stomach lurched as everything suddenly clicked into place. The late nights, the password changes, the defensive behavior. I had been blind to what was happening right in front of me. I thanked Tyler, asked him not to approach them, and hung up. For hours I sat in our living room, surrounded by photos of our wedding and trips together, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. When her flight was supposed to land the following evening, I waited at home, her text messages about the successful meetings in Chicago burning a hole in my pocket. Amanda walked through the door around 7, rolling her suitcase behind her. She brightened when she saw me launching into stories about Chicago, until she noticed my expression. "What is wrong?" she asked, her smile faltering. "How was the Emerald Room?" I asked quietly, showing her the photo Tyler had sent. Her face went through a series of emotions, shock, panic, then quickly shifting to anger. "You are having me followed now," she deflected. "A friend happened to see you," I replied. "The Chicago trip was never real, was it?" Amanda attempted denial at first, claiming it was just one dinner with her boss while they were both in town. When I pressed for more truth, mentioning the inconsistencies I had noticed for months, her story began to change. "It was just a recent development," she insisted. "A mistake. It did not mean anything." As the night progressed, the truth emerged in painful fragments. The affair with Jason had been going on for 7 months. What began as harmless flirting at office happy hours had evolved into secret hotel stays and fabricated business trips. She swore it was just physical and meant nothing emotionally, as if that would somehow hurt less. "I love you, not him," she insisted tearfully. "It was the attention, the excitement. I was weak, but I can fix this. We can fix this." I packed a bag and moved to a hotel that night, needing space to process the betrayal. The following days were a blur of sleepless nights and unfocused workdays. Amanda bombarded me with texts and calls, alternating between tearful apologies and promises to change. She enlisted our mutual friends to speak on her behalf, painting the affair as a momentary lapse in judgment, rather than the months-long deception it was. My friend Jordan offered his guest room when the hotel costs mounted. While staying with him, I decided to dig deeper, feeling there was more I did not know. Using our shared account passwords, I discovered secret credit card statements showing hotel stays dating back nearly a year, expensive gifts purchased for someone other than me, and dinners at restaurants I had never visited with her. The final blow came when I accessed her cloud backup. The text messages between Amanda and Jason revealed not only the extent of their physical relationship, but also how they had mocked me. She had shared private details of our marriage, laughed at my trust in her, and even speculated about a future with him once she figured out the least messy way to leave the marriage. Reading those messages, something broke in me permanently. The woman I had built my life around, shared my deepest self with, had not only betrayed our vows but had actively ridiculed the love I gave her. The foundation of trust was not just cracked, but completely shattered beyond repair. When I confronted Amanda with this evidence, her tactics changed. She became desperate, claiming she had been confused, that Jason had manipulated her, that she had realized her mistake and ended things with him weeks ago. But the timestamp on the messages told a different story. Their most recent exchange had been just that morning, planning their next rendezvous while I was supposedly still in the dark. I returned to our house, only to collect essential documents while she was at work. The home that had once represented our future together now felt tainted, filled with memories I could no longer trust were genuine. As I gathered financial papers from our home office, I found a brochure for a fertility clinic. Amanda had apparently been researching next steps for starting our family, even while carrying on her affair. The knowledge that she could compartmentalize to such an extent chilled me to the bone. After discovering the full extent of Amanda's betrayal, I knew I needed more than just physical distance. I needed a complete severance, a clean break that would allow me to rebuild without her shadow constantly looming over me. A traditional divorce would mean months of negotiations, meetings, and continued contact that I simply could not bear. I consulted with a divorce attorney, discreetly exploring my options. She explained that while disappearing would not stop legal proceedings if Amanda filed, I could essentially remove myself from her life completely. The property and assets might be forfeit, but my sanity and chance to heal seemed worth any financial loss. The emotional struggle tore at me daily. Despite everything, part of me still loved the person I thought Amanda was. I mourned not just the end of our marriage, but the death of the future we had planned together. Children we would never have. Anniversaries we would never celebrate. The growing old together that had seemed so certain. Each morning I woke up hoping the pain would have lessened overnight, and each morning the weight of betrayal felt just as heavy. Friends urged reconciliation, suggested couples therapy, reminded me of my vows. Only Jordan truly understood when I explained that some breaches of trust cannot be repaired, that staying would mean accepting a fundamentally altered relationship built on a foundation of lies. Methodically, I began preparing for my departure. I secured my finances, first opening new accounts at a different bank and transferring half of our savings. While Amanda was at work, I gathered my birth certificate, passport, and other essential documents. I inventoried my truly irreplaceable possessions, sentimental items from before our marriage that I would take with me. I requested a leave of absence from work, citing a family emergency. My manager, seeing my obvious distress, approved 2 months without question. With remote work options, I knew I could eventually transfer or find a new position elsewhere. My career, at least, could survive this upheaval. The hardest part was writing the goodbye letter. I sat in a coffee shop across town, pouring my heart onto paper, explaining why I needed to leave without further contact. I avoided accusations or bitter recriminations, focusing instead on my own need for healing and closure. I explained that I was not doing this to punish her, but to protect myself, that sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone we once loved is to let them go completely. On a Wednesday morning in May, after Amanda left for work, I packed 2 suitcases with clothes and a box of personal mementos. I took our dog Zeus to Jordan, who had agreed to keep him until I was settled. Zeus whined, as if sensing something was wrong, and saying goodbye to him nearly broke my resolve. I left my wedding ring on top of the letter on our kitchen table, a final period marking the end of our story. I drove east with no particular destination in mind. At first, just putting distance between myself and Seattle. After a few days of motel stays and long stretches of highway, I called my college roommate Marcus in Boston. We had remained close over the years, and when I explained my situation, he immediately offered his spare room for as long as I needed. Boston represented a fresh start, 3,000 miles from the ruins of my marriage. I arrived after 5 days of cross-country driving, exhausted but feeling the first faint stirrings of relief. Marcus asked no questions beyond what I volunteered, providing the quiet support I desperately needed. Within 2 weeks, I had changed my email, phone number, and deleted all social media accounts. I set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box that only Jordan and Marcus knew about. I found a small apartment in Cambridge and secured a remote position with my Seattle company as a temporary arrangement while I looked for local opportunities. Those first months were excruciating. Loneliness ambushed me at unexpected moments, making me question my decision. I missed the comfortable rhythms of my old life, even as I recognized how false they had been. At night, I would sometimes reach for Amanda, out of habit, the empty space beside me, a stark reminder of all I had left behind. Through Marcus, I found a divorce recovery support group that became my lifeline. Twice weekly, I sat in a circle with others whose marriages had ended through betrayal, abandonment, or simply irreconcilable differences. Their stories helped normalize my pain, and their progress gave me hope that I too would eventually heal. 3 months after my departure, Jordan called to tell me Amanda had hired a private investigator to find me. She had been frantic, after discovering I was truly gone, convinced at first that something terrible had happened to me. When she found my letter and realized I had left voluntarily, she oscillated between rage and desperate grief. The investigator had questioned our friends, my parents, even my former colleagues. Amanda had filed a missing person report, though the police quickly closed it after confirming I had left of my own accord. She had contacted hospitals in multiple states, created social media campaigns to find Lyle, and even appeared on a local news segment about spouses who suddenly disappear. Jordan assured me he had revealed nothing, but the knowledge that Amanda was actively searching unsettled me deeply. Part of me had expected her to simply move on, perhaps continuing her relationship with Jason now that I was out of the picture. Her determination to find me confused and worried me. I briefly considered reaching out to ask her to stop, but realized any contact would only encourage her pursuit. Instead, I recommitted to my new beginning, focusing on building a life that was truly mine. I joined a hiking club, exploring the trails of New England with new friends who knew nothing of my past. I volunteered at a coding boot camp, teaching weekend classes to career changers. Slowly, I began to recognize myself again in the mirror, the haunted look in my eyes gradually fading. 2 years passed, and Boston had become truly home. I had been promoted to lead developer at a healthcare startup, bought a small condo overlooking the Charles River, and established routines that felt authentic and grounding. My support group had transitioned from a necessity to a community where I now helped newcomers navigate their fresh grief. My healing journey had not been linear. Therapy twice weekly, during the first year, helped me process not just the betrayal, but my own role in ignoring warning signs. I developed new hobbies, taking sailing lessons on the harbor and joining a community garden. The friends I made knew me only as Lyle from Boston, not as the man who had fled a broken marriage across the country. Through therapy, I had come to understand that disappearing, while necessary for my mental health at the time, had been an extreme measure, born of extreme pain. As I grew stronger, I acknowledged that I might have handled some aspects differently. Yet I never regretted the core decision to make a clean break. Dating again had been terrifying at first. The first few attempts were disasters, my trust issues creating walls before connections could even form. My therapist gently suggested waiting until I was ready, focusing on friendship first. When I eventually met Diane at a sailing club event, our slow progression from sailing partners to friends to something more felt healthy and natural, built on transparency neither of us took for granted. Then one morning, checking my work email, I found a message from an address I did not recognize. The subject line simply read, "It is Amanda." My hand froze over the mouse, heart suddenly racing. For several minutes, I could not bring myself to open it. The past I had so carefully walled off, threatening to flood back in. When I finally clicked, her words spilled out in a long, emotional message. She had obtained my email through a mutual acquaintance who had recently relocated to Boston for work and had spotted me at a tech conference. Amanda wrote about her regret, her therapy journey, how she had recognized the depth of her mistakes only after I was gone. She described her search for me, her refusal to file for divorce, despite her lawyer's advice, her certainty that if we could just talk, we might find our way back to each other. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness," she wrote, "but I have changed. The person who hurt you so deeply no longer exists. Please, Lyle, just one conversation. That is all I ask." The email stirred a complex mix of emotions. Curiosity about her life now, a faint echo of the love we once shared, but predominantly a protective instinct warning me against reopening a healed wound. I did not respond, but I did not delete the email, either, leaving it in my inbox as I tried to process this unexpected bridge from my past to my present. A week later, I ran into Kevin, a former Seattle colleague who had relocated to Boston. Over coffee, he mentioned seeing Amanda at an industry conference the previous month. According to Kevin, she had spoken of me as her estranged husband rather than her ex, telling mutual acquaintances we were working through some issues and would eventually reunite. "She shows your wedding photo to anyone who will look," Kevin said uncomfortably. keep saying you are meant to be together, that finding you is just a matter of time. Honestly, man, it is a little concerning. This information solidified my decision to maintain distance. Amanda's perception of our situation differed dramatically from reality, suggesting she had not truly accepted the finality of our separation, despite years passing. After careful consideration, I composed a single clear email, explaining that reconciliation was not possible, that we had become different people, and that continued pursuit would only prevent us both from finding peace and moving forward. Her response was immediate and emotional, alternating between apologies and pleas for another chance. When I did not engage further, the emails increased in frequency, then abruptly stopped. I hoped she had finally accepted my decision and was prepared to move on. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, I walked into my regular coffee shop near work and froze. Sitting at a corner table reading a book with an untouched latte before her was Amanda. She looked up, as if sensing my presence, our eyes meeting across the room for the first time in nearly 3 years. "Lyle," she said, standing quickly, "please do not leave. This is not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. She admitted after minimal pressing that she had tracked me to Boston through social media posts from mutual connections. She had been in the city for 3 days, visiting my usual haunts based on information gleaned from the same sources. The coincidental meeting had been meticulously planned. We sat at her table, the familiar scent of her perfume triggering memories I thought long buried. Amanda looked both the same and different, her face thinner, new lines around her eyes, suggesting her own difficult journey. She spoke rapidly, as if afraid I would leave before she could say everything she had rehearsed. She and Jason had continued their relationship briefly after my departure, she explained, but it had quickly fallen apart under the weight of guilt and recrimination. She had been in therapy since, working to understand her capacity for deception and her fear of authentic intimacy. She had sold our house, moved to a smaller apartment, changed jobs. Every decision, she insisted, had been part of becoming someone worthy of a second chance with me. As she spoke, I realized something profound had shifted within me. Looking at her, I felt neither the burning love of our early days nor the searing pain of betrayal. Instead, I felt a distant compassion for someone who had once been central to my life, but was now effectively a stranger. I could acknowledge her pain without feeling responsible for alleviating it. "Amanda," I said gently when she paused for breath, "I believe you have changed. I hope you have found healing. But we cannot go backward. The people we were to each other no longer exist." She began to argue, citing our history, the depth of our connection, but I held firm. I explained that my life in Boston was not just a placeholder until reconciliation, but my actual life, one I had built carefully and valued deeply. I spoke of Diane not to hurt Amanda, but to illustrate that I had truly moved forward. "I do not wish you anything but peace and happiness," I told her sincerely. "But that journey needs to be separate from mine now." Her tears were real, her grief palpable, but I detected a new understanding in her eyes. Perhaps seeing me in person, hearing the certainty in my voice, had finally made the reality of our situation clear in a way that emails and secondhand reports could not. "I never thought you would really be gone," she admitted quietly. "Even when I could not find you, even when years passed, I always believed we would eventually find our way back." Sometimes, I replied, the kindest thing we can do for someone we once loved is to let them go completely. She recognized her own words from my goodbye letter, and something shifted in her expression. We parted with an awkward handshake that acknowledged the chasm between the intimacy we once shared and the polite distance that now defined us. I watched her walk away, her shoulders straight, despite her obvious sadness, and felt a complex mixture of relief and closure wash over me. 1 year after that coffee shop meeting, I sat on my balcony, overlooking the Charles River, reflecting on all that had transpired since I left Seattle. The painful chapter that had once defined me now felt like a story about someone else important to my development, but no longer dictating my present or future. Through mutual friends, I heard that Amanda had finally filed for divorce, which I signed without contest. She had moved to Chicago for a fresh start of her own, apparently taking some of the lessons from our ending into building a healthier life for herself. I wished her well with genuine sincerity, The bitterness that had once colored my memories of her mostly dissolved. My relationship with Sophia had deepened since that final encounter with Amanda. Unlike my marriage, which had been built on whirlwind romance and idealized projections, Sophia and I had developed something more measured and honest. We had seen each other at our most vulnerable and chosen to move forward together with open eyes. When she moved into my condo 6 months ago, it felt like a natural progression rather than a milestone to be achieved. The greatest lesson from my failed marriage and subsequent reinvention was understanding my own worth. I had once believed love meant enduring anything, accommodating any behavior, sacrificing my own well-being for the relationship. Now I recognize that healthy love should enhance, rather than diminish each person, that boundaries were not obstacles to intimacy, but essential foundations for it. I learned to trust my instincts again, to acknowledge the red flags I had once so willingly ignored. That strange feeling when a story does not quite add up. The subtle shift in someone's eyes when they are hiding something. The inconsistencies that the heart tries to explain away, but the mind recognizes as warning signs. These signals were not cynicism, but self-protection. Not paranoia, but wisdom. Finding forgiveness was the most unexpected part of my journey. Not just for Amanda, whose actions had catalyzed my transformation, but for myself. I had to forgive my own blindness, my willingness to accept less than I deserved my part in maintaining a relationship that had become fundamentally dishonest long before I discovered the affair. The complete break I had engineered, drastic as it seemed even to me now, had been necessary for my healing. Some wounds cannot close when constantly reopened. Some patterns cannot be broken while still engaging with their source. Sometimes the bravest decision is to walk away entirely, not from anger, but from self-love. My approach to relationships had fundamentally changed. Where once I had given trust freely and completely from the start, I now understood that true trust is built gradually through consistent actions over time. Where I had once merged my identity entirely with my partner, I now maintained healthy independence alongside connection. These were not walls, but bridges to authentic intimacy, allowing me to love more honestly than ever before. I often think about those early dark days after leaving Seattle, when I questioned if I would ever feel whole again. I want to tell that version of myself that not only would the pain subside, but it would transform into something valuable, a hard-won wisdom that would ultimately lead to genuine happiness. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to completely remove yourself from a situation that was causing you harm? Did you find, as I did, that sometimes a clean break is the only path to true healing? If you have been through something similar or are going through it now, please share your experience in the comments below. Each story shared helps someone else feel less alone in their journey. If you found value in my story, please consider hitting subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Giving this a thumbs up helps others find it too. Remember, healing is not always a straight line, but it is always possible. Thank you for being part of my journey. Wishing you peace and strength, whatever chapter of your own story you are currently writing.